Hello, lovelies. Because I'm open about my mental issues and so on, I quite often get people messaging me asking for advice and so on, which I usually give privately. But someone contacted me wanting me to do a video on these particular issues, but it did seem quite personal. Now, obviously, I'm not going to explain who they are, but I want to go over the things that they said and offer my perspective. But everyone is different. Everyone needs different things. What works for me might not work for you. So whatever advice I give, it always has the proviso, find what works for you and do that. Okay, what works for me might not work for you, what works for you might not work for me. CBT was no good for me at all, but other people it's helped a great deal. Different drugs help different people. Some people are worse off taking pills for their depression, most are a lot better off. There's no one size fits all with really any health treatment. Everyone's case is individual to some degree, but with mental illness there are so many different moving parts. It's chaotic. So find what works for you is the best advice that I can give to anyone, and just try a whole bunch of different things. Now this guy, he's been suffering from major depression since 2007, which is the same year I was diagnosed, so we're depression buddies. The brutal fact of the matter, and I do try to be completely honest when I talk about these things, the fact of the matter is that both he and I are likely to continue to suffer from depression for the rest of our lives. If we've had it that long, if we've had, at least 3 long bouts of depression, pretty much that means you're going to be depressed for the rest of your life, which is a horrible prospect. But if you acknowledge the truth, if you can come to terms with the truth, then I think you can survive it and thrive. And I think all correct action, all right action has to descend from acknowledging the truth. So there are no real prospects that either he or I are going to get better, but we can get better at managing our condition, understanding our condition. Treatments are going to improve and broaden. There's going to be more and more options, so we'll be able to cope better. So that's what you need to focus your hope on. Don't wish that it goes away. Just acknowledge the progress that you make in managing and handling and understanding your own illness. They served in the military, which is something I do not understand. It's not something I would ever want to do, really. So it's hard for me to empathise with that. But I can empathise with the fact that they were doing something they loved, that gave their life a great deal of meaning and purpose, and that has been taken to an extent. I am doing my dream job, but I find it very difficult. I'm not able to work the amount or to the capacity that I would like to. A lot of the joy has been sucked out of it for reasons that aren't anything to do with me lately, but it does make it harder. But then just recently I've been doing a lot of video editing, graphic design and so on, and being appreciated for it, which has really made me feel a hell of a lot better. It's not exactly what I ever set out to do, but it's extremely fulfilling. It's creative work. So if I find it harder and more emotionally difficult to create games or create fiction, there are other ways in which I can get that same fulfillment doing other things. And if you get fulfillment out of service, if that gave your life meaning and purpose, you might be able to get that elsewhere, not necessarily through work exactly, but if you volunteer. There's always plenty of charities around that always need help, and they'll take volunteers as and when they can get them, and they're very likely to be understanding if you have a condition like depression and be willing to work around you. They're just happy to have anyone helping them out. If you're a religious person, churches often do charity work, which you might find that you would get a lot out of helping with. Or if you suffer from depression, there are usually mental health charities around. I mean, locally there's the Mind Centre out in Andover, and they do things like workshops where people with mental issues can come together and apply their skills as and when they feel able to fix things for people who are poor and impoverished or whatever around the area, or fellow sufferers who need a table repaired or anything like that. But they also do art classes, they also do writing classes, things like that. And if I was more socially capable of mixing with people and engaging in group therapy or something, I would probably go to those, and I would probably volunteer and help out. But if you really get that much out of service and you feel that that's been taken from you, find something where you can volunteer on your own time when you feel capable, and you might get that fulfilled somehow. Being in the service, it seems that they never really questioned their own mental or physical strength, because it was a job that demanded a lot of that had a culture of that, a culture of toughness, if you will. And I'm not one of these people that's going to write off Stoicism or strength or whatever else as being toxic, right? It's not, and these are male-coded ways of dealing with a lot of this, and a lot of the time it works. There is enough there for you to be able to cope. There is a positive extent of Stoicism. It's just when you take it too far that it becomes a problem. But I can see how it would be a shock losing the thing that gives you meaning, and also losing something that reaffirmed your mental and physical toughness in that way. But consider this. If you're in the service, odds are you knew someone directly or indirectly who was injured or maimed or wounded or suffered PTSD or whatever else. How would you treat them? Would you consider them to be mentally or physically weak for getting the jitters whenever a car backfires, or needing a crutch or a wheelchair or a spine brace or whatever else it might be? I don't think you would. One of the things that I've found through various therapies is that I am much harder on myself than I am on other people. I'm much more understanding of other people and their situation and their failings than I am of myself. I expect too much of myself, and I suspect that this is what's going on with you. I suspect you are being much harder on yourself than you would be on anyone else with an injury. And depression is an injury. It's just an invisible illness, an invisible infirmity. So if it helps, right, it might help to explain to others as well. If you describe your issue and your condition in terms of a physical injury to people, to yourself, would I be this hard on myself if I was in a wheelchair? Talk to other people if they say something. Say, imagine that I'm in a wheelchair, or I had both legs amputated and I'm hobbling around on prosthetics or whatever. You wouldn't be that hard on yourself. And this is part of the problem, it seems, in this instance, and a lot of other people's instances as well. You're not alone in this. Other people don't understand, and they treat it as if it's a weakness or a failing on your part. Particularly if you have a life that on the surface looks fine. If you have a wife, children, career success, money, whatever, people look at that and say, what reason have you got to be depressed? Being depressed isn't the same thing as being sad, right? Depression can be triggered by events, but it can also happen all by itself for no explicable reason whatsoever. Chris Cornell committed suicide, right? He had everything going for him, but he still felt like a miserable failure and still felt this kind of crushing sadness that in the end drove him to take his own life. Anthony Bourdain, massively successful, nothing to be sad about, really, and he took his own life because depression isn't the same thing as being sad. It doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how great your life appears to be. It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't care, right? It's like a physical injury. You know, you wouldn't go up to someone in a wheelchair and go, why are you rolling around in that? Your life's perfect. You've got a beautiful wife, lovely children, you make millions of quid a year. Why are you in a wheelchair? Go on, get up out of it. That wouldn't happen, right? And that's depression. Isn't something you can just tough through in that way. At least not for long, not forever. So the people telling you it's a weakness, it's a mental weakness, you've got no reason to be depressed, they don't understand what depression is. And you might find the physical illness analogy is a good way to get it across to them. I understand your partner doesn't particularly understand either, and that might be a good way to get it across to them as well. But don't question yourself, right? It's an illness. It's an injury to the brain. It's not you being weak. One of the descriptions of depression is it's not a weakness, it's just you've been strong too long. The strongest tree, the strongest bridge, they all need maintenance. Bridges, trees not so much, but enough strain and they snap. This is going to be the thorniest part of this, but it is the part that I think I understand the most. They find themselves questioning their masculinity. Now, I've never been a super masculine guy, impressive beard and deep voice, notwithstanding, I've been the intellectual, artsy freak for my whole life, one way or the other. The only, really masculine trait I think I have, which I've kind of overdone, is that Stoicism. So I speak from experience when I say that it can be useful, and it doesn't have to be toxic, but when it gets taken too far, it's toxic. But there are all these male-coded things around strength and endurance and holding it together and so on that they're kind of two-edged. They can be helpful, but again, taken too far, they're not helpful. But look, you're no less of a man for being brain injured than you would be for being physically injured. It's not your fault. You wouldn't be questioning yourself if you were hit by a car, right? And got both legs broken and were hobbling around on crutches. You wouldn't be feeling less of a man in that instance. And that's what this is. It is an injury to your brain. For one reason or another, chemical imbalance, viral infection, people don't really know what exactly causes depression. There's a tendency that runs genetically. There can be triggering events. There's some suggestion that viral infections might be something to do with it. Nobody really knows, right? You got blindsided by something. If you'd got meningitis and had to have a hand amputated or something to deal with that, no one would be questioning it. You shouldn't be questioning it. You're no less of a man for suffering an injury. And I think that is the frame that would be most useful for you. I used to feel unmanly a lot of the time when I was in my teens, I guess, through to my early 20s. But I came to understand there's many different ways of being masculine. It's not something that our society has particularly addressed. Feminism has given women many more ways to be feminine than society has given men many more ways to be men. And what has been done is being kind of imposed on men rather than bubbling up from men. So it's a thorny subject, but I don't think you or I are any less men than because we've suffered an injury. It doesn't make us unmanly. It doesn't make us weak. And living with this day to day and still getting up and doing things, right? That is a victory every day, and it is a testament to our strength. So my best advice then is don't be so hard on yourself. Try and reframe your depression in the same way that you would frame a physical injury that someone else has suffered, and use that as a way to explain it to your partner, to your friends, to your family. Try and find some people who understand and appreciate the issues that you're having. And if you miss that service, if you miss helping others, if you miss the reaffirmation of your identity that you got from that, then find something that you can do. Charity work, just something online, helping other people with depression. Use the skills that you have in some constructive way to help others, but on a voluntary basis, to the amount that you can. And that would be my best advice. But again, I reiterate, find what works for you. Zang.
I need to get well. I hurt deep in my bones.